Hi guys, it's Shonnytee and welcome back to my channel. Or if you're new, welcome and thank you for clicking on this video. Today's video is going to be quite a hard topic to talk about because it's just insane, like it's just awful. But today's video is going to be about the American Murder, The Family Next Door film that was on Netflix like a few weeks ago, and I'm just saying my take on it, and I'm just saying how I felt about it. I watched it and I had to grip the quilt a few times because it was quite distressing to watch, but you know, it was also really interesting, so I'm gonna get into that. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, then stick around. So guys, let's just get straight into the video. So there was Shannon and Chris Watts, and they lived in a lovely house in Colorado, and they had two beautiful children. They had two little girls. They had Bella and Celeste Watts, and they were just, you know, just like any normal family, you know, just living in the house. And they were just, you know, you'd think they were just a normal family. Like, he was the dad, you know, he was working and he was providing for the family, and he was like your he was like the dad that you would expect, you know, any man to be. If they were going to be a dad, you'd expect him to be there for the child, and he was that. He was always there for his kids, and he was so loving towards them, and they loved their dad. So at the start of the film, it shows you that Nicole is concerned. Nicole is Shannon's best friend, and you see that at the beginning of the film that Nicole is very, very concerned about her best friend Shannon, because Shannon was supposed to have a doctor's appointment at 9 o'clock in the morning and Shannon was not answering. Nicole had been texting her and she was not replying, and that was not like Shannon at all. If she texted her, then she would respond, or if she didn't, she'd let her know, or I'll respond to you in a bit, you know, type thing. So it was totally out of character for Shannon not to be answering her phone. She became alarmed and she was like, no, this is not right, type thing. And she was like, I'm gonna like contact the police, because, you know, to do like a search warrant type thing, because this is like scaring me now, because she should be answering her phone. This is not like her. She dropped Shannon off the night before because they just got off like some like business like trip type thing together. So she just dropped her off at like 2 a.m. in the morning, and she'd not seen her since. She dropped off at 2 a.m. in the morning and she was texting her, she's not heard from her since. So like I said, she got concerned, and then she decided that she needed to contact the police. And you know, because she was concerned about Shannon. She just spoke to her like at 2 a.m. and then the next morning she's not heard anything from her. She knows full well that her friend's supposed to have gone to a doctor's appointment at 9 a.m. and she hasn't attended it, and she hasn't heard from her friend. So, you know, she felt like she needed to call the police just to make sure she was okay. Now, because you want to believe that everything's fine, you don't want to think the worst of anything, you know, you want to just assume that, yes, they just forgot their phone and they just have been busy, and you know, they just can't get in contact. Of course, anyone's going to think that. And the police were just saying that, oh, maybe the grandparents have come to pick Shannon and the grandkids up and just taken them, or maybe it's just the fact that Shannon's phone has died. You know, like I said, you don't want to be thinking the worst. You want to just think, oh, okay, it'll just be because, you know, she's forgot her phone, she's nipped to the shops, she'll be back in a bit type thing. You know, she's probably busy with the kids. That's what you want to think. Nicole rings Shannon's parents, and that's how close like Nicole and Shannon were. Nicole rang Shannon's parents after, you know, a while, because she was like, no, I'm actually getting concerned now. This is where I actually need to involve her parents. So she rings her parents and she speaks to her mother, Shannon's mother, and she says to her, oh, I've not heard from Shannon. Have you heard from her? And they're like, oh no, we've not heard from Shannon. And then the mother says, well, I actually contacted Chris, you know, Shannon's husband. I actually contacted Chris and he asked where Shannon was, and Chris told me that Shannon was staying at a girlfriend's. So the way he said it, he was like, oh yeah, she said she's staying at a girlfriend's. So he just said it so blasé, like, yeah, she's staying at a girlfriend's, don't worry about it type thing. But your wife had a doctor's appointment at 9 a.m. and you're not at all concerned or even a little bit like, are you all right type thing, you know? There was just no emotion. Like, Nicole is saying, her best friend is saying that she's not heard from her since 2 a.m. and you were the last person to see her because, you know, you were at the house when she got there. So since then, your friend Nicole, her friend, is trying to work out like what's going on. Chris said that Shannon was staying at her girlfriend's house. He never actually said the girlfriend's name. Like, and you would think, being you know, being in a marriage, you would know who your wife's best friends are. You would know your wife's girlfriend. You'd know, you know. So for you to kind of not know that information and know that your friend is staying, and know that your wife is staying at her girlfriend's house, it was just strange. The police were trying to get into the key code because they had like a key code to get into the garage, but they didn't know it. And they also didn't want to enter the property without a warrant, because obviously if without a warrant and you enter someone's property without their consent, they can like sue and stuff like that. So they wanted to make sure that, you know, they did the right things correctly before they made any mistakes that could mean that they would get in trouble. Eventually they go into the house and they're looking around, and the house looks completely normal. Like, it's just empty, like no one's in the house. It's just quiet. Nothing looks like it's been moved, you know, it just looks normal. And then, yeah, it just looks normal. And then the police go upstairs, like, they go upstairs and they're looking around and they go into, I believe, I don't know whose room it was, they just say a little girl's room, so I'm guessing it was Bella's room or whatever. And they go into her room and they look and they see a blanket, but they just see like a blanket. They see the blanket is missing, like there should be a blanket on the bed and the blanket wasn't there. And the police quoted, oh, it just looks like, you know, they took a couple of things, like they've just gone for a trip, because the clothes were still there in the wardrobe and the kids' toys, majority of the kids' toys were still there. So there was nothing to suggest to the police, oh my days, the kids have been kidnapped, you know, they've upped and left. Shannon's upped and left and took everything with the kids. So it was nothing to suggest to the police that had happened. They were kind of a bit like, well, what's going on? So Nicole discovers that Shannon's phone is still there. Like, she's looking around the house and she finds Shannon's phone and she's like, okay, now I'm really getting worried because Shannon's phone is here and she is not, and neither are the kids. So what's going on? And then she sees that Shannon's purse, in America they call a bag a purse, but obviously we call it a bag. So she looks into Shannon's bag and she sees that, she looks to see if her medication is still there, because she knows that Shannon does not go anywhere without her bag or her medication. She didn't go anywhere without it. If she's going to be going somewhere, she'll take the medication with her, because it's actually, you know, like, she needs to be taking her medication. She had lupus, which is like an autoimmune disease where it, like, you know, over time your body like degenerate, is like, it's kind of like attacking itself, and it can affect like you're fatigued, you're tired, and it can just affect you in general. So, and it can just make you feel really poorly, and it just affects you like day to day. It just makes you feel awful, like it's something you can't get rid of. So it's like a degenerative disease. So over time you start to feel worse, and it's like a muscle wasting type disease. It's awful. So, you know, she needed to be taking that medication to kind of contain it and make sure that the disease wasn't getting any worse. But the fact of the matter was, it was not, the medication was in her bag. So Nicole grew even more concerned, because she was like, oh my god, her medication is still in her bag and she doesn't go anywhere without it, so where the hell is Shannon? Because it just concerned, it scared her. Now here was the more scary thing. When Nicole went into their room, she started looking around and she notices that, she goes into the room and she notices that her wedding ring is still on the nightstand. which was odd because she said obviously she's married to Chris, so she always has like her ring on her finger, you know. It was weird for her ring to just be on the nightstand. It just didn't make any sense at all. Like there was no signs of a robbery, no signs of a break-in, so everyone was just so confused. Also at this point, I'll insert a clip, but Chris had turned up at this point because Nicole had called him concerned, and then he showed up at the house. Once Nicole said that she was calling the police, he then turned up at the house, so he was there too, just walking around. And he also confirmed that Nicole worked from home, so that was even more of a concern that Shannon was not there, because you know, she wasn't there, but her stuff was.
Her phone's here.
Does she work?
Yeah, she works from home.
Oh, from home?
She works, this is her lifeline.
Chris was turned up as soon as Nicole called the police because, you know, she was like, I don't know where she is, I'm gonna call the police, like I'm growing obviously concerned. Then Chris showed up, and then I'll insert a clip. You can see they're like walking around the house, and they go into the bedroom, and that's when she discovers that she's found her ring and that she's found her phone and the medication and all that stuff.
And there was no note or anything by the wedding ring?
No.
He also reveals that Shannon works from home, which made them grow even more concerned, because if Shannon worked from home, she would have been at home, but she wasn't, you know, and all her stuff was. So it just didn't make any sense. Everyone was really confused as to where Shannon's whereabouts was and where the kids were. It just didn't make any sense. There was a neighbour across the street, and he alerted the police that he actually had a camera fitted like a few weeks or months prior, because people had been breaking into people's cars and stuff like that, and there was a lot of car theft going on. So he'd inserted cameras so that, you know, he could see what was going on, and it kind of like stretched across the whole street so you could see everything. And he also mentioned that there was like a grey truck, and it was Chris's truck, and Chris had moved the truck into the eye view camera, you know, the eye view of the camera, so that it was on his truck so that people weren't breaking into his. That's what he says. Like, I'll see if I can insert a clip there too.
Because if there was any sort of action out there,
His cameras,
I would have got it.
like
Right.
we had issues the other week when people were stealing stuff out of like garages and stuff like that, and I had parked my truck
I had
right here.
to park right here.
Yeah.
And he also mentions, Chris mentions, like, he goes, oh yeah, and by the way, my wife is 15 weeks pregnant. Literally, he says it just like that. Like, there's no expression, there's nothing. Like, any normal person would be like, oh my god, yes, my wife is missing and she's 15 weeks pregnant. Also, that would have been the first thing you said. My wife is missing, my kids are missing, and my wife is also pregnant. She's 15 weeks pregnant. I'm so scared, I'm so panicked, I'm so worried. Can you please find my family? None of that. This was his expression. There was just no emotion when he said them words. That was even more weird. But then, you know, that's what my head was thinking when I was watching it. I was like, what the hell? And then as soon as he walks out, the neighbour immediately starts whispering, because he thinks that Chris could hear. So he has to whisper really quietly, and he's like, I don't trust him. He's acting dodgy as hell. Because he was like, he doesn't understand why that day Chris decided to move his truck in front of the camera. Also, Chris was acting too loud. He's never like that. That is not his character, the neighbour says. Normally Chris is quite quiet. He doesn't speak to anyone. He's not very social. So the fact that he came into the neighbour's house and was so, you know, engaging, and so, you know, he said that was totally out of character for him. He's acting suspicious, and the police was like, well, wouldn't you act strange if your family had gone missing? You know, if this had happened to you, wouldn't you be feeling a bit out of character, acting a bit out of character? And the neighbour was like, yeah, I would, I get it. But, you know, he was like, he'd never acted like that, you know, I'd watch him type thing. So you're like, oh wow. So even the neighbour's even saying that he's acting odd, and that's not how he normally acts. So you think, oh.
No.
He also said that when, you know, Chris had moved his truck, he had been unloading things out of his garage, which was totally a character the neighbour said, and that's why he was also saying that, like, yeah, he's acting suspicious, he's not acting right, he never does that, so why was he doing it on a specific day and now his wife and kids have gone missing? It's just odd, like, it's just weird. Police asked Chris if he thinks that they've exhausted any more contacts that they can think of, you know, to try and see if they can find Shannon and the kids. And Chris is very nonchalant and he's like, that's all I can think of. He's like, that's all I can think of. I feel like Nicole would know more than I do because she's a girl. What the hell? If that was me and my family was missing, you would be doing the utmost, talking to every single person that your wife has been in contact with. You'd be telling everyone to be looking for her, be on the alert, you know, have you heard from her? You'd be giving them every contact detail you could think of until you found your missing wife and your child, you know, your children and your unborn child. You want them to be found. But he was very nonchalant, very chill. There was no emotion at all. He was like, I don't know, I feel like Nicole would know more than I do because she's a girl. What? Shannon is your wife. Bella and Celeste, Cece are your children. What is going on? So the officer goes, would you like to take my card, you know? And, you know, the card with like his contact details. So Chris just goes, I'll take it. What the hell? I just can't deal, because if that was me and the police officer is saying to me, oh, would you like my card? I'd be like, yes, thank you. Thank you very much. I'll take it so I can contact you, you know, keep up to date with anything, if you find anything, blah, 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 blah. None of that, and none of that at all. He literally was just like, I'll take it. Yeah, sure, I'll take it. Why not? There was just no emotion from the guy at all. It was just crazy. So time's going on and obviously they're still not found out anything. It's still the same day that they realise that she's missing, and Nicole is growing increasingly worried. They also ask Chris, like, you know, how are you feeling about all this? Chris turns around and says, this isn't right. I don't know what to do right now. And like I said, again, no emotion, none at all. He then says, I don't know what to do right now, especially if they're not safe, and that's what's tearing me up inside. But if you're saying, oh my God, it is tearing me up inside, you'd be like, it's literally tearing me up inside, like I can't cope. But no, he was like, it's tearing me up inside. And there's just no emotion at all. Like, he is distancing himself. Now, when I have watched, because your girl loves to watch all of these like crime shows, I'm into this kind of stuff, I'm into this kind of murder mystery type thing, I love it. So for me, it's like, well, when, you know, the psychologists have either looked at this and body language and stuff like that, and they assess all this type of stuff, they're like, well, he is acting a bit like sus, do you know what I mean? They're saying that he's kind of distancing himself from a situation type thing. That's kind of like the behaviour that they look at, because it's like, he's acting dodge. We are now on to day 2, which is like the second day now that the kids and Shannon have been missing. It is now the 14th of August. The next morning, police call Chris trying to get some more information about the kids and about his wife Shannon, to see if they can get some more information, you know, so when they're out looking for them or alerting people, they can at least be like, oh yeah, you know, they look like this, they look like that, you know, just to kind of bring some more awareness to everyone and hopefully help them find them and bring them back home. The police say, do you know her height, her weight, her eye colours, you know, her hair colour? They ask all these types of questions, and Chris proceeds to say that her height would be 42 inches. Her height would be 42 inches. And her weight would be 40 pounds. And her hair and eye colour would be brown. Now, to me, this is weird, because, like I said, he's talking about, he's saying would be. Now, like I've just said, I like watching all these like crime shows and stuff like that, and body language and all that type of stuff. So when they say stuff like that, you know, they analyze speech and stuff like that, and they analyze body language, they analyze it all, you know, everything. And what they say is when someone like that is saying things like would be, it's like, why are you saying she would be like £40? Why are you saying she would be? You'd be like, oh yeah, she's, you know, she's 42 inches and she's £40, and she's 42 inches tall and she's £40. Her weight is £40. You wouldn't say her weight would be £40, because that sounds like you're talking about your daughters in the past tense. Why would you talk about your daughters in the past tense like they are no longer here? And if they're no longer here, how do you know that? How would you know that your daughters are no longer here? Because you have nothing to do with what's going on. All you know is that your daughters are missing. So why would you assume that your children are dead or no longer around? It's almost like you know something. So to me, that stood out when I started watching the film, like it's already a bit sus. Then he turns around and says that Celeste would be 37 inches tall and that she would be 37 pounds. He says that she has blonde hair, and he says that she has hazel, and that she'd have hazel eyes. Like, again, to me, it just sounded sus. Like, it just didn't make any sense. Why you'd be talking about your girls like they are no longer here. It just didn't make any sense. They then proceed to ask Chris about his wife, Shannon Watts. And this is what Chris had to say about his wife. She has a scar on her forehead. That's it. That's literally all he said about his wife that he's been married to for 8 years. He says she has a scar on her forehead. That's it. That's all he had to say about his wife. He was very calm throughout the conversation, and like I said, there was no emotion. Now, if that was me talking about my family, that, you know, my family members or whatever that are missing, I'm going to be hysterical. I'm not going to be calm during the situation, because I don't know what the hell's going on. I don't know where my family is. You know, you're going to be hysterical. You're going to be like, she is 40, you know, you'd be stuttering and stuff like that. You'd be like, oh, she's £40. She's, you know, you'd be getting, there was no emotion at all, just none. So after that phone call, the police are roaming the streets and they're trying to, you know, they're handing out flyers, they're knocking on people's doors, and they're bringing awareness to the fact that Shannon and the kids are missing. We're trying to make people more aware. We're trying to make it so that, you know, they can be looking for their kids, they can be looking for Shannon. You know, any news they hear, they can ring the police and alert them, type thing. So that, you know, we're just trying to bring people, like, bring awareness to people and make them know what's going on. And they get to one neighbor's house, and this woman, she says that she spotted a grey truck near the Watts' house, and she said that she knew it was a grey truck, but it is not Chris's truck, because Chris's truck was a lot larger than that truck. The truck that she spotted was a smaller grey van, so it wasn't his, but it was the fact that it was near. She remembers that she was looking and she didn't actually know whose truck that was, but thought it was really strange that the truck was there because she'd never seen it before. Next, you see the police arrive at Chris's house, and they've arrived with, like, you know, like the police dogs, like where they can smell stuff and, you know, looking for a scent. They arrive with the dog, and the police officers, like, stood there with the dog, and you immediately see Chris look very, very nervous. Like, he's biting his lip. He looks really out of character. Like, he's acting very odd, like he's nervous about something. And, you know, any normal person would be a bit anxious. There's these dogs that you know, they're puppy-like, so you'd be a little bit alarmed. And of course, it's a stressful time for him because his family's missing. So the dogs go into the house and start sniffing around, and they're trying to, you know, get a scent of the kids, trying to get a scent, just anything that doesn't seem, you know, right, anything that can lead them to the disappearance of Shannon and the kids. So they go upstairs and they go into the bedrooms and start, like, sniffing around the bedrooms, you know, just trying to get a scent of anything of them, really, to try and see if they can find them or find any clues. The policewoman that had the sniffer dogs made the most randomest comment, and it's just one of them comments where you'd pause for a minute and be like, what the hell? Because where did that comment even come from? She turns around and says, I don't know about you, I don't know if it's just me, but this house is looking way too immaculate to be normal. And then the other police officer was like, yeah, you know what, you're right, it is very clean, isn't it? Like, you would kind of just be like, what? Like, if it was me, I'd be kind of just sat there like, what? As if she's just said that comment. And it's one of them remarks where it sticks. You don't just hear it and be like, oh yeah. No, it sticks because you think, why the hell is the house so clean, type thing. Like, they were saying that nothing was like out of place. Like, it just makes you think like, what? Do you know what I mean? So Chris is like interviewed outside his house after all that, and the reporter asks him, oh, do you think she could have just took off, meaning his wife, meaning if Shannon just took off with the kids and just left him? He goes, I mean, right now I don't really want to throw anything out there. It just kind of says it like that, and he shrugs his shoulders. Like, again, there's just no emotion at all. He just shrugs his shoulders like, I don't know, I don't really want to be throwing it out there and just saying random things that might not be true. And I'm just like, where's the emotion? There's none of it. Literally, when I was sat there watching it, I was just like, this guy has no emotion. His family is missing and he has no emotion at all. Like I said, I've watched so many like crime stories where, you know, they analyze people's body language and their behaviors, and they analyze them and stuff like that. And because I've watched so many of them, I kind of know what to look for when I'm kind of watching these types of shows. So while I was watching Chris, I was thinking the exact same thing that any of the other people that be analyzing type thing. And the thing that stood out for me was like, you know, the fact that he's shrugging his shoulders and there's just no emotion. Psychologists would be saying that Chris is trying to distance himself from the situation. Like, you know, he wants nothing to do with it mentally. That's what that kind of behavior is. The shrugging of the shoulders, it's kind of like, you know, I'm kind of not bothered right now, we'll just see what happens type thing. And that's kind of what they would be saying. That's how his behavior demonstrates that that's his thinking, you know, he's just trying to distance himself from a situation. So after all that, Chris gets interviewed like outside his house, and the reporter says to him, oh, you know, did you guys get into like an argument or something before she left or whatever? And then Chris says, oh, we had an emotional conversation. It pauses, doesn't say anything. There's like this pause and it's just quiet, and then he goes, let's just leave it at that. And he has the biggest smirk on his face. Like, why would you be smirking? Like, this isn't even a funny situation. Your wife and your children have gone missing. Your wife also is pregnant, 15 weeks pregnant with your unborn child, and you are smirking. Like, if I can find the clip, I'll insert it, because it's just like, what the hell? Like, why would you even be smirking at something like that? And again, that's kind of the body language. It's kind of like, you know, do you know something that we don't know? You know, are you hiding something? You know, or do you just not care type thing? Like, again, it's the whole distancing himself from the situation. Chris got interviewed by the police, and he was itching his eyebrow. Like, every time he was talking, you know, he was like bent over and he was like that, and he was itching his eyebrow. Now, again, like I say, I watch these crime shows, so psychologists say that when someone is like itching their eyebrow and, you know, he's been interviewed and been asked questions by the police, like, he's literally having to like think on the spot. Like, he's, you know, he's thinking, because he doesn't know what to say. He's trying to make up a story, or he's, you know, that's what they say. They say that when someone is itching like that, it means they're trying to think on the spot because they really don't know what to say. They also say that he was using a lot of hand gestures, which I agree with, because I remember watching it thinking, this guy is like doing this a lot. Like, he's using hand gestures to kind of convince the police officer that, yes, what I'm telling you is the truth. You know, I need you to believe me. He then goes to say, when we were together, we both agreed that there was no spark. Now, what psychologists say when they analyze that is that when he's saying that information, he's doing hand gestures. But what they say is that if he was telling the truth, right? If he was telling the truth, then your hand gestures move in time with what you're saying. Now, if you just analyze me when I was doing that, my hands would have moved in time with what I was saying because I was telling the truth. Whereas Chris, when he was talking, he might go lollipop, then do the hand gesture like a second later. That is evidence that there might be some kind of, you know, some not truth telling there, you know, kind of fibbing, kind of telling a white lie, you know, you're not completely being honest. Psychologists also said that he raised his left eyebrow when he was talking, which could suggest that, you know, he was lying, he was being deceiving, and he was faking his emotions, because it means that when your left eyebrow raises, it means that your emotions are not matching with your words, and it could suggest that he was faking the entire thing, like it was just a show, you know, it was just a front. He also didn't even make any effort to call them. Like, Shannon felt like she was kind of forcing him to be calling. Like, I think she FaceTimed him and he didn't answer, so I think he texts her back and he's like, oh my God, he goes, I'm really sorry that I didn't answer. And she's like, no, you're not. No, how about instead of being effing sorry, you call your kids and you make an effort. I was like, go on, Shannon, you tell him, because it's like, your kids have been away for 6 weeks and you're not even making an effort to call them or check on them and see how your kids are doing. You're not even making an effort to check up on your wife, who is pregnant, 15 weeks pregnant, well, probably a bit more, with your, oh no, sorry, it was 15 weeks pregnant with your unborn child, because this was before, you know, that you went missing. But 15 weeks pregnant with your child, and you can't even be bothered to check up on them, make sure they're okay. Then Shannon texts him, you'd think that you'd miss me and the kids. And then she puts, and even the film highlights this in black so we as viewers can see this, and it says, guess not. So that means that Shannon knows that her husband is not being how he should be, you know. She's sus, she knows that something isn't right. She's thinking all sorts in her head. She's even texting her friends and she's like, I think he's having an affair because, you know, he's not even interested in me. He's being really distant with me. He's distancing himself. And, you know, I'm like, what's going on? She's like, you know, she's texting her friends. She's like, I think he's having an affair. She's like, because he's being really distant. He's never been like this with me. You know, he's not really making an effort. He's not calling me, anything like that. She's like, I really think he's having an affair. So I think she said something to him like, oh, is there someone else? And he's like, no. He just goes, I'm really sorry for not calling you, you know, and he's saying all these things, reassuring her. And this is the thing about manipulators. They're very good at making you feel like you are being over, you know, you're being over the top, you're being dramatic, and he's making out like, I'm so sorry, you know, I'll do better type thing, you know, throwing her off course, making her feel like, you know what, maybe I need to chill, maybe I need to not be so crazy. So day 3 rolls round and Chris is being called into the police station to have a polygraph test. The police officer that was doing the polygraph test could see that he was quite, you know, jumpy, and that, you know, he couldn't relax, and he was like, I'm sorry. He's like, you know, I'm so sorry that, you know, I can't relax type thing. I'm sorry. It's just, you know, it's just a little bit daunting. And she's like, yeah, don't worry about it. She's like, I know. She goes, it's perfectly fine. Of course you're going to be a little bit over the place, you know, with everything that's going on. She's like, just relax, you know, just take a moment and take some deep breaths, because, you know, you want to pass this test, you know, you want to make sure that this test, you pass it. So just relax, you know, take your time and tell me when you're ready and we'll do it again. Because they had to keep stopping and starting because he was just way too jumpy, and, you know, he couldn't relax, and he was moving, and yeah, he was just all over the place. So I think it took hours for this polygraph test to be done. It took hours because he was just so, you know, like restless. Chris gets called back to the, you know, he gets called back in to the police station. This was like a few days later, I believe. He gets called in and he sits down, and there's the woman that did the polygraph test with him, and then there's the guy, another guy, and then he sat down. He's like, right, Chris. She goes, I'm sorry to tell you, she goes, but you failed the test. And You know, she was like, it was pretty obvious that you was going to fail the test because, you know, you was very, you know, jumping. And it was also quite obvious that you wasn't honest on this test because, you know, you didn't pass like the whole test. Like, it was quite obvious that you were very dishonest with a lot of the answers that you gave us. So you won't be going home today type thing. That's how they said it. Like, you know, like, we're gonna sit here and we're gonna sit here and we're gonna go through these, we're gonna go through all this and we're gonna figure all this out. You know, she's very good, this officer. She's very good because she's reassuring him that, you know, it's okay, we're gonna talk about it.
So it was completely clear that you were not honest during the testing, and I think you already know that. You did not pass the polygraph test. Okay. So now we need to talk about what actually happened. And I feel like you're probably ready to do that.
Chris replies, what do you mean? I didn't lie on that test. I was honest. I didn't lie. This guy has been found out that he is not telling the truth. The polygraph test, you failed it. They are telling you that you didn't pass it, and you are still adamant that you was telling the truth. So what? The test is lying then? As soon as he starts saying, I didn't lie, blah, 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 the male officer cuts him and he's like, stop. You know, he's like, just stop. As if to say, stop chatting because we know and you know we know. So stop, you know. So he goes, stop, and says, just take a deep breath. You know, just take a deep breath. And then Chris cuts him again and says, he proceeds, you know, he's adamant, and he says, I did not lie on that test.
I didn't lie to you on that polygraph, I promise. Chris, I know. Stop. It's time. Just stop for a minute. Take a deep breath.
This guy is really sticking to his story. Even though he knows he's been caught out, he's going to be adamant. He's going to keep saying he doesn't know what you're talking about because, you know, what are you talking about? He finally admits that he cheated on his wife. You know, because I remember briefly one of the questions that was asked was, you know, if he cheated on his wife or type thing, and he was like, oh no, I've never cheated on my wife, I'm very faithful to my wife type thing. You know, and you know, he obviously failed that question. He lied, and then he's just admitted it now, like, okay, yes, you know, I did cheat on my wife. So we're slowly starting to see, you know, a bit of the truth, but not all of it. Like, he's making them work for it. The police officer is like, while all this has been going on, you have not shed one tear since your wife and your children have gone missing. You have not shed one tear. Why is that? And he's just adamant again, and he's just like, you know, he just doesn't know what to say type thing. He proceeds to say, I'm not saying anymore. He goes, I want my dad. His dad was in the police station. He requests that he wants his dad. So he's like, I'm not saying anything. He's like, I want to talk to my dad. You know, he's sat there. He's like, I want to talk to my dad. I'm not saying anything. I want to talk to my dad. Like, he's acting really, really, really like crap, you know, like crap. I need to speak to my dad now. I need to talk to him. I need to tell him up because now these police officers are grilling me and there's nothing I can do. So it's like, I need to tell my dad to get in here now. So, you know, the female officer, I tell you, that's really good. She was like, yeah, okay. She's like, we'll get your dad in. We'll get him in to talk to you. So they get the dad in, and what Chris doesn't know is that there is a camera in there that is recording everything. I think he's forgot that you are in a police station and there are cameras everywhere. So there's this police camera that's got audio and it's recording everything that's been said. So anyway, Chris's dad walks in and he sits down. He's like, Chris, he's like, what's going on, son? And he's like, oh, he goes, I failed the test. And then Chris's dad is like, oh my God, you know, typing like, you know, what's going on? And he's like really distressed, and, you know, they keep showing where it takes a long time for him to kind of talk. Like, he's really trying to make it so that, you know, he's leading up to having to say something to his dad, because he doesn't know what to say, or you know, and like I said, the truth is slowly starting to come out. So finally he turns around and says, Shannon hurt the kids. You're like, what the hell? Because you're thinking, what? I was not expecting this. He goes, Shannon hurt the kids. And because Shannon hurt the kids, I was so angry. He's like, I was so angry. This is where all the emotion starts coming out. I was so angry. I saw Shannon hurt the kids. And then the dad proceeds to ask, how did Shannon hurt them? And he's like, she smothered them with a pillow. And you're just like, what? Where is this coming from? You know, because you're like, Shannon was not that kind of character. She was not that kind of person. The way Nicole was describing her and stuff like that, that does not sound like the Nicole that we saw. So, you know, you're a bit like, what the hell, you know, type thing. You're like, whoa. And, you know, he's like, oh yeah, Shannon smothered them with a pillow. And then because I saw that she'd smothered them to death with a pillow, he goes, I then strangled my wife. I then strangled Shannon out of rage because I was so angry at the fact that she, you know, she killed my 2 kids. You know, she killed my 2 kids, so I strangled her. And I remember just being like, what? That's actually mad. Of course, once he said that, his dad's like, Jesus Christ, Chris, you know, because he's like, he was not expecting that. Do you know what I mean? He was not expecting to hear that his daughter-in-law killed her own kids, killed his grandkids, and then on top of that, because of that, his actual son then killed his daughter-in-law. Like, what the hell? You know, what are you supposed to do with this information? And then Chris admits that he buried Shannon, Celeste, and Bella in the oil tanks, which was where he worked, and he buried them there, and that's where the bodies were. The police were analysing this as they were talking, you know, they're looking on the cameras and listen to this, and they didn't buy any of it. But as soon as they've heard him admit all that, they walked back in and they were like, come on now, Chris, we know that's not the truth. You know, you need to kind of like admit it. We've got some truth, we've got some of it, we've not got all of it, you know, you need to tell us a bit, you know, you need to be telling us more. And, you know, he was sticking to his story. He was blaming Shannon. Shannon killed the kids. Shannon smothered the kids. And in my defense, I only killed Shannon because she killed my children. That was his story, and he was sticking to it. Then they're like, right, come on now, Chris, because, you know, come on, you've already done the hard part, you know, so now you just need to confess the rest. You're all halfway, more than halfway there. You've already done the most difficult thing you could have done, which is tell the truth. So you just need to tell us the rest so we can get all this sorted, you know, and we can find your children and we can find your wife's bodies and get it all sorted. And then he turns around and admits what actually happened that night. This is what shocked me. This was what made me sad. And just a warning, it is quite gruesome and it is quite sad, because you just, you know, I know any mothers that are watching this, you just wouldn't do this to your own child. It's just absolutely horrendous, you know. So this is, you know, like I said, warning, you know, it is quite distressing and it is quite sad. So just a warning for you all. He admits that Shannon had returned because, like I said, she'd gone like on a girls' trip with Nicole, hadn't she? And then he admits that night when Shannon returned from this business trip with Nicole, Nicole, you know, when Nicole said she dropped her off at 2 o'clock, and that's the last time she heard from her. I think she'd text her or whatever, and that's the last time she saw her. That's the last time she heard from her. Shannon walks in, you know, he'd been looking after the kids. Chris had been looking after the kids. You know, they were in their rooms and whatever. Shannon comes into the room and she's feeling the distance, you know, she's feeling the distance from him still. But then she climbs into bed and then, you know, he's just being really, really distant with her and kind of thing. But then she notices that actually, he's actually being really like kind of close with her type thing. Anyway, they end up getting intimate, you know. And then after that's done, he starts being cold with her again, and I think he just, I swear, he started doing exercise or something like that, and she just burst out crying, and then she started like texting her friend. He then turns around and said to his wife that, you know, their relationship isn't working. And then she turns around and said, I knew there was someone else. You are never ever gonna see your kids again. Can you imagine that? So Chris has just admitted that, you know, he doesn't think the relationship's working, and Shannon clicks and she's like, really? You've just got intimate with me, you know, I'm pregnant with your child, and I've got 2 other children with you, and you're telling me that you don't think it's working. We've been married for 8 years, and you're telling me that you don't think it's working. You've just got intimate with me, and, you know, because you've said that, I'm like, what the hell? No, you ain't seeing your kids again. So imagine Chris hearing that. Chris hearing that? Excuse me, how dare you tell me that I'm not going to see my own 2 kids and my, you know, my other child that's on the way? How dare you? As soon as she says that, you're not seeing your kids again, Chris proceeds to grab her. You know, Shannon's like, get off me, you know, and, you know, like, get off me. Imagine how hard it is. She's carrying her weight as well as the baby. So she hasn't got much strength, and he's a lot stronger than her, you know, he's quite muscular. So he then proceeds to strangle her, like, strangle her. And he does it that hard that, you know, he strangled her to death. Like, it's just horrendous. He strangled her to death. He killed the mother of his children. And bear in mind, he has just killed Shannon. Shannon is pregnant with his unborn child, and he has just killed her, which means that if he's killed his wife, he's also killed his unborn child. So let that sink in. He's just killed the mother of his unborn child and, you know, his 2 kids. Now, you know, just bear in mind, if he's killed Shannon, that means that he has just also killed his unborn child. Just let that sink in. The guy was that mad that he just saw rage and just killed his wife because she decided, actually, you know what, forget this, I'm not standing for this. I want a husband that's going to appreciate me. If you're cheating on me or you're doing something you shouldn't be doing besides concentrating on your family and your wife, I'll leave. You know, I will leave and I'll go and find somebody that will. Or, you know, I don't need a man type thing. She was about to be, she's always been independent, so she was about to go and do what she wanted to do. But guess what? Chris weren't having that. He was like, you know what? If I can't have you, even though I'm not appreciating you and I'm going with somebody else, then no one can have you. So he's proceeded to teach her a lesson and strangle her to death, which also means that he's just killed his child. Like, do you know what I mean? It's just crazy. This next bit just, it chokes you up because, whew, as soon as he's finished killing Shannon, Bella walks into the room and sees her mum face down on the bed. Bella goes, "What's wrong with mummy?" I'm going to mention Bella had the blanket in her hand. This is the blanket that would normally be on her, you know, on her bed. It wasn't there, you know. Remember at the beginning of the video when I mentioned that they'd said that the blanket was not there? Bella had that blanket in her hand and she was like, you know, how's mummy? What's wrong with mummy? I don't even think he answered her. I think he just kind of said something like, oh yeah, she's fine. He proceeded to wrap Shannon in a blanket and carry her downstairs and place her into the truck. He grabs the girls and he puts the girls in their coats and takes them in the car. Now this next bit is absolutely insane to me because this is hard. He then puts Shannon's body on the floor of the car. He then straps the 2 girls into their car seat and he sets off because now he's got a dead body and he needs to get rid of it. But let me just make you guys understand what I'm saying here. He has the 2 children in the car and their mother is wrapped in a sheet below their feet. Below their feet. I can't even. The poor kids are sat in the car and their mother is below their feet. That is just so sad. The kids proceed to ask Chris, is mummy okay? You know, is she all right? Of course, they're young kids. I'm sure, I can't even remember, but they were young, you know. I'm sure Bella was 5, something that kind of age where there's just this innocence where, you know, you're gonna wonder what's wrong with mummy, you know. And they're like, oh, what's wrong with mummy? Is she okay? Chris just answers, she'll be fine. While he's admitting this, you know, in the police station, in the interviewing room, while he's admitting this, he's, you know, he's crying and he's upset, you know, he's crying. While his dad sat there, because his dad still sat there at this point, and you know, like I said, they're trying to get him to really admit what happened, and he's like, yeah, and then they asked what was wrong, and I just told them that mummy was fine. So this journey was a long time, he says. He says his journey was a long way away, you know, because he was traveling to his work. You know, he's traveling to where he was going to dispose of the bodies. Now, remember, at the beginning of the video, I told you that, you know, he disposed of the bodies in, you know, the bodies were disposed in oil tanks. So remember I told you he admitted it, didn't he? He said that he'd disposed of them in oil tanks. So that's where he was driving them to, because obviously that's what he admitted. So when he's telling us what he's actually doing now, what was going on, he's like, oh yeah, I drove them to the oil, I drove to my place of work where I worked, and I disposed of their bodies. You know, he disposed of the bodies there. So that's the destination he was taking them to, you know. So he goes there, and obviously he's disposing of Shannon's body, and he like disposes of hers first. The girls started to doze off to sleep in the back of the car. So while they were dozing off to sleep and whatever, he just did that with, you know, with Shannon and whatever, sorting her body out. Now this next bit's really difficult, so like I said, just bear with me and, you know, brace yourselves, because like I said, this next bit is really difficult to say. He then proceeded to get a blanket and smother Cece. He proceeded to smother Cece, and you know, the fact of the matter is she was already dozing off type thing. So, you know, he proceeded to just do it. Ugh. So anyway, he's done that to Cece. Bella must have just been like, you know, what's happened to Cece? Because now Bella's noticed that her mom isn't there and Cece isn't there. So she's like, you know, what's happened to Cece? Chris then proceeds to smother Bella as well, which is, yeah, really difficult. He smothered Bella, which means that now he has to dispose of 3 of their bodies. So he then admits that he disposed of the 3 bodies in the oil tanks. As soon as he's disposed of the bodies, he then starts making phone calls to the school, unenrolling them from school. He then contacted a realtor to start discussing selling the house. He then texted his new girlfriend, which was the one they'd been having an affair with. Her name was Nicole also. And he started texting her, talking about how, you know, their future and how they were finally going to be able to spend, you know, spend time together, you know, they're actually going to be able to have a future together. Now, there's a lot of things where people have been like, and I agree, because it's like, if he wanted a fresh start so bad, why did he just not get a divorce? Why did he not just separate from her, get a divorce like any normal person would, and just leave and go and be with Nicole? I don't understand. Why did you have to murder your children, murder your unborn child, and murder your wife? Like, there was no need. You could have just left them. You could have just done that and, you know, moved on. When he was in the courtroom, I can't remember who it was, but whoever was stood on the stand was saying he just got rid of his family like we didn't exist, which is exactly what he wanted to do. He wanted to get rid of them so he could have a fresh start with his girlfriend Nicole, And, you know, he even got rid of his unborn child, you know, which we find out was actually a boy, and they named it Nico. You know, they named him Nico, and he just got rid of them, all of them. You also see that in the courtroom, Chris is shaking like a leaf. He's literally shaking like a leaf because, you know, he knows this is it now. He knows he's being caught, he's being found out. He knows what he did is wrong. He knows, you know, that this is it now. This is the end of the road. And, you know, you are going to get punished for what you did. He received 3 life sentences for the death of Bella Watts, Shannon Watts, CC Watts, and Nico Watts. To put it lightly, he will never ever get out for what he did to his family. Apparently, Chris, since this film's come out, is not happy about it. Obviously, he's not seen it, and he just said he doesn't like it because it's a constant reminder about what he did, and, you know, it haunts him every day. But it's one of them where it's like, you know, it's sad because there's a YouTuber I watch, and she was in prison, and she was like, every day all you do is have time to think. So she said she could imagine him just being sat there and just thinking about it and playing it in his head, because that's all he's got to do, think, you know. So yeah, he said he didn't like that his texts were out there for everybody to see, and, you know, it's like everyone's in his personal business and there's nothing he can do about it. He said that the film triggered him, like it made him on edge. You know, it's already hard enough that he's in prison, and then knowing that as well, that's triggering him and making him feel some kind of way. He's also mentioned that he's not heard from Nicole, you know, his mistress. He's not heard from her since, you know, he's been in prison. He's not heard anything from her, and he's hoping that one day when he gets a letter, it is from her. And there's belief that, you know, they have code names or whatever, so when she messages him, he'll know exactly who it is and who it's from. But no one would know because, you know, no one would know because they don't know the code name. Shannon's family requested that Chris did not receive the death penalty, because when Shannon's dad was on the stand, you know, saying their final words to him and stuff, they were like, you know, he didn't have the right. He says that Chris did not have the right to take the you know, the family, the children's lives, and, you know, Shannon, his daughter's life. So they were saying, why should they have the right to take his life? Which is so sad. But I kind of get where they're coming from. They don't want to be responsible for a death just like him, because then they're kind of like, they know better than him. So I'm going to just read some statistics out, because it's just, this story just made me realize just how scary of a world we are living in, and that there are actually people like this, you know. In America, 3 women are killed by their current or ex-partner every day in England and Wales. 2 women a week by a current or former partner. So there's 2 women a week, you know, that are like, you know, murdered by their current or ex-partner. But as you can imagine, since COVID-19, it has risen significantly. Parents who murder their children and their partner are more often men. And this is the scary bit. This crime is always premeditated. So when Chris is there saying, oh, I did it because she probably said this and she got me mad, hell no. Bear in mind, I told you that he'd been distancing himself from Shannon and his family, which means that he had been planning to kill them already. Like, he had this mindset that, yes, you know what, I want to be with Nicole, my girlfriend. I don't want my wife anymore. I don't want my unborn child. I don't want my 2 kids anymore. I've decided that's not the life I want. So in order to be with Nicole, I need to get rid of this entire family I've created. Just get rid of them like they're nothing, you know? So he planned all this. So guys, that is the end of this video. If you like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. I know it was really, really distressing, but, you know, it was one of these stories that we just had to cover because it's just so distressing. Also, I need you to comment down below. I need you to tell me what you thought, your opinions, because there's just so much speculation about this investigation. I'd love to hear your thoughts, your opinions, you know. I'd love to discuss it with you guys. I'd love to see what people think. Do you agree? Do you think he deserved it? Do you think he actually did it, you know? I know he admitted he did it, but did he actually do it? Did he not do it? Do you think his mistress was involved? Do you think his parents were involved? You know, there's all sorts of speculations that are going around. So comment down below and let me know what you think. Also, don't forget to subscribe, so you can always see when I'm posting videos. Also, don't forget to click on the notification bell so you can always be notified every time I post a new video. I'm thinking of doing another video about this topic because there's more stuff I've not covered, but this video is so long already, so I'm definitely going to do another video on it. Actually I'm going to do another video on it, so stay tuned for that, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Okay, bye guys.